Hi, welcome back to the channel, you guys. Special guest today, this is my girlfriend Jasmine. She's a math coach, and we're gonna go over the question that I see asked a lot: how much math is there in CS? So for full disclosure, I am currently in a CS master's program. I have one more math class to do, and so I think I'm okay qualified to answer this question, but every university is going to be slightly different, so take this more as the broad strokes and not so much exactly the exact courses you need. Every school is going to be a little bit different, but hopefully this will give you a general understanding especially for anyone looking to get into the field. But yeah, let's get started. I'm going to assume that, if you're coming, the first class you're going to take is Calc 1, whether you're in high school or you're looking to do it in college. So I'm just going to go over the classes real fast. These are the classes that I've had to take. Like I said, your mileage might vary, but it's going to be Calc 1, Calc 2. Some schools are going to require Calc 3, differential equations, linear algebra, discrete 1, discrete 2, some sort of stats. So in total, you're looking at about 8 math classes, which is kind of a lot. And so, when I hear people ask like how much math is there, let's put it this way. A math minor requires Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, and differentials, which is also generally required for CS, and about 9 units of upper division. And each math class is about 4 to 5 units. So CS, a lot of schools, CS is either very, very close to a math minor, or you're already going to have a math minor. So yes, there's a lot of math, but hopefully between the two of us, we can give you some general advice on how to survive, and not just survive, but also hopefully thrive. So question number 1, okay, someone says to you, hey, I'm not good at math, but I'm really interested in STEM. I want to do something like in the technologies or informations. Do you have any general tips for these types of people that might not think they're the math person, but are really interested?
So as a teacher, I do have kids coming in who feel like they're not good at math. Even their parents are saying, oh, I'm not a math person, so my kid isn't a math person. So I'm trying to break that thinking, because it's a huge misconception that there is math people and there's non-math people, and that people who are math people have a math brain, or like a different brain that is, has different parts, or like bigger parts than other parts of a non-math brain. But that's all a misconception. Mathematicians have a very similar brain to the rest of us, so we are all mathematicians, and that is something that I want to build in my students and their parents, is that everyone is a mathematician.
Yeah, I would generally agree with this. So for a disclosure, I was not and I'm going to put this in quotes because I learned the majority of this from her. I was always under the misconception also of you're either good at math or you're bad at it. But if you think of it more as like a language or some sort of skill, like playing guitar or anything, the more you do of it, you're guaranteed to get better. Mm-hmm. You might not be a pro, but there's no way you can't not do math and not get better. It's just impossible. You do more, you get better, and that's just generally how it is. Another thing that I recently learned is something called math anxiety, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this because you guys have been in school. Test time comes, or you feel like you understand the material really well, but then when test time comes, you just freeze up. How would you describe math anxiety? I think you're probably more
I think it's just when you're taking a math test, or even if you're met with like a really hard problem, people tend to get really sweaty, or their heart starts beating, or you just get really like butterfly in your stomach. I mean, we've all felt that, right? When we're met with a really big problem. I think the biggest thing there is to kind of take a moment to breathe and calm your body and calm your mind down, and really just break down the problem that you are trying to solve in more manageable chunks, because ultimately the question of math is how can you use what you do know to solve for what you don't know. So if you figure out what you do know first, you can then figure out what you don't know from there. So I feel like it's just a matter of like changing your mindset to being more that every challenge is an opportunity and not an opportunity to succeed, versus an opportunity to fail.
Yeah, and I think especially in our society, we put there's a very high risk to reward when it comes to math. I'm sure you guys notice this, like if you're taking other classes, there might be like homework or participation or quizzes or something like that. At least in my math classes, it's 100% exams. There is no, they don't care if you do the homework. You should do the homework, but there is no credit. There is no, if you show up, we'll give you participation. It's, 75% of it is exam, and then your final is 25%. So I think the math anxiety comes up there too, because there's a lot riding on, whether your exam's 1 hour or 4 hours or however long. It's really do or die. And at the same time, if you're only being examined 3 or 4 times a semester and you're covering so much material, like, there's a lot of pressure. At least for me, my general advice is always, number one, just try to be as prepared as you can. Always show up to class. When they say like homework is not mandatory or whatever, I still do the homework. And I think when the homework is done is when you feel comfortable. So if they assign 10 problems but you do not feel comfortable, go ahead and do more. If it only takes you 3, then just do 3. Just wherever you feel comfortable, that's where I would say you're done with the homework, and always do the homework. But when it comes time to test time, what I recommend is always, like, for me, something that I've tried doing was always work out. It helps clarify the mind. Like, you're doing something else, something physical. It kind of takes your mind off of learning. Get a good night's sleep. Obviously, number one is just don't try to study the day before. It's too much pressure on yourself. And then going up to an exam, I always also try to go for a walk. I don't study right up until the last second of an exam, because then you're going to start questioning everything you do. But these are just some general advice on math anxiety. There's no way to completely get rid of it, but there's definitely things you can do to minimize it. Question number 3 is the math basics. And I think we're pretty qualified to talk about this, because for me, when I was in high school, I was spoon-fed a lot of information. So, I might have gotten an A in my classes in my exams, but when it came to SAT time and the standardized testing of, I forget what it's called, like the California's whatever, I actually scored really low, and I actually scored far below average in a lot of the math. So I'm not coming at it as like I'm a genius. I would definitely say I struggled a lot in math. And so with the basics, right, and I think you also talked about this, algebra, even though a lot of us would consider it a very low level course, it's really the fundamental of all these upper division math classes. And then that really comes down to, what did you say, it was like fractions or? Yeah,
fractions in 4th grade.
Yeah, but so, if you guys have a chance, and I know algebra might have been a long time ago for you guys, but algebra and I would say trigonometry are very, very important when you're moving forward. And the number one thing I see my classmates and I struggle with, it usually comes out to trig identities and really simplifying fractions, exponents, just general algebra. Because when you move forward, the professors are not going to hold your hand and be like, oh, you need a quadratic this, or you need to do a synthetic division to simplify this. You're just going to have to know. And if anything, if you guys are not taking calculus yet, or you guys have some spare time, I would definitely brush up on these, and it's going to help you a lot. So the trig identities, the unit circle, just general tips on factoring and exponents and stuff like that is going to help you go a really long way. And like I said, if you do not have these down, you're going to have a very hard time when it comes to calculus or linear or all these. The part that I always have the hardest issue with is the algebra. Guaranteed. Like, a problem might take you 20 minutes, but probably 15 of those minutes is you trying to factor something or simplify something. The algebra or the calculus or whatever, it's very a small portion. But if you have those very strong foundations, I think you're really going to set yourself up for success. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is just math people in general. What I've noticed at least is that math people, quote unquote, and when I mean math people, I'm just saying people that require a lot of math to do their field. It's not one set person, and there's no such thing as somebody, I'm sure there are, I'm sorry. There might be people that are good at math, but the common thing that I've noticed, to get to the upper divisions, it's just people that did not give up and are resourceful, because sometimes you might not have a good professor or whatever, but really math just, I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, math is hard. It's, you know, and I think if you go into it with that mindset of math is really hard, and if you don't understand something, it's not that you're dumb or that you're slow. Some people just require more time, some people require more practice, and math is really hard. And I think if you approach it from that angle and just don't give up and try to find resources for help, which that's gonna be the next section that we're gonna talk about, I think you're gonna find a lot more success. And I personally feel, and I've seen it, it's just math, to get to the upper levels, it's just, you can't give up, you gotta have a strong foundation, and just, you gotta practice, because at the end of the day, math is really hard, and that's just a fact, there's no getting around it. So last thing, we're just gonna give you some resources that will hopefully be useful to you. These are all things that I've personally used or that she has used. I'm sure there's a lot more, so if you guys want to add more in the description below, that's totally fine. But do you want to start?
So the first one is the TED Talk about math anxiety. I've actually shown this to my kids before our big math test for the state, and they've taken it and used it as tips. It basically goes through like what math anxiety is and gives you tips on how to deal with it.
I use a lot of YouTube for help, and so these are going to be a lot more specific to your classes. So the first person that I would recommend is Professor Leonard. He definitely helped me get through Calc 1, Calc 2, and I'm taking him right now for Calc 3, but he is just the best. He's just the absolute best. When I took Calc 1, I literally took like 8 years away from school, and I wasn't even good at math. So I was already bad at math, and I already took 8 years off. But Professor Leonard just caught me up, and you know, I think in his videos too, he talks about this. Like, you need to be good at algebra and trig, because like he might slow it down, but when you're in class, your professor is not gonna like go over these things with you, so you need to be prepared. But Professor Leonard 1, 2, and 3, really good. He also had he has one for stats. I have not taken a look at it. I did my stats a long time ago, but I would assume it's really good. So the next person I would recommend, and some of you guys already know this person, is TrevTutor. He does a lot. He did linear algebra, discrete 1 and 2. I took him for discrete 1, and I can highly recommend it. It's very, I don't want to say it's complex, but it's different because you're not doing a lot of computations. It's a lot more theoretical. So he breaks down a lot of these theories and proofs and makes it a lot more digestible. I have not taken discrete 2. I'm taking it in the fall, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using TrevTutor for his help on this. He also has a linear. I don't really recommend it. He has a lot of errors with it, a lot of computational errors, and I think because linear algebra is, I would say it's 50% computation, 50% theory. I just can't recommend it in good conscience, knowing that, you know, you might look at his videos, and then if you're looking at his computations at face value, you might not do too well. So another one is PatrickJMT. I'm sure everyone's heard of him. You need to look up anything. You need to know how to do binomial expansion or synthetic division. This is the guy to go to. NancyPi, I found her really recently. I used her a lot for my Calc 2. She does really well. I think she's a MIT student or something, but she's really good. She's good with, I used her a lot for trig substitution, trig identities, and just general Calc 2 stuff where it started getting a little bit harder. And the last person I have here is 3 blue, 1 brown. He doesn't do so much the computation. He does a lot more of the theory. But I like his videos because it's very well animated, and you can tell he put a lot of time into it. But if you, it makes a lot of the things you're learning, he puts it into context of what does it actually mean, instead of just being like, here, calculate this integral. He kind of explains like what it is using animations and all that, and it's definitely going to help you. It's helped me a lot in the higher up maths, like for example in linear, because a lot of it you just don't know what's going on. You transpose something and then you calculate something and then you get an answer, but you don't know what that actually means. He puts like a visual to it so that if you're going to use this in the future, it puts it into context, so it maybe helps you understand the what you're trying to do a little bit better, and it's going to help like reinforce it in your mind of what you're actually doing. And so the last thing I can recommend, this one's kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't take advantage of this because I've talked to some math professors. You guys don't go to office hours. Like, I know some, and I'm not saying this as all math professors are helpful, but they are teaching the course. So, and you're paying them to teach you. So if you don't understand something, you know, I'm not saying like during class, like you need to stop the class for them to explain something super simple. But if you have a question, either you need to show up before class, ask during break, or during when the class is over. I think generally you have like a few minutes if it's a quick question. But if you don't understand something, you are paying this professor. This professor's job is to teach you. So if you don't understand something, you need to go to them for clarity. Go to their office hours. If they don't have office hours and they only have a TA, go to the TA, but make sure you stay on top of all these things, because you might think, oh, this is really dumb, like I'll never see it again. Like, I thought that so many times, and then literally 2 weeks later or something, it's like, oh, we're gonna only talk about this dumb thing that you thought was never gonna come back. But everything, from what I've learned, everything comes back. Everything's useful. You need to know this material, especially like if you're gonna go further in math, you need to have a strong understanding of all these things, because a lot of these courses might seem really high, but these are low-level math classes. I really just wanted to help people out because I see this question being asked all the time, and then I had this opportunity with Jasmine, who is a math coach, and she's studying the way we study and learn. So you know, a lot of what I learned is from her, and I just thought I would pass on the information. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys found it useful. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. If you do a thumbs down, also just let me know in the comments below how I can improve or something I can add for next time. All right, see you guys for next time. Peace.